Welcome to the Contrarians, and tonight we are live. It's another episode of the Battle of the Rock. Tonight, CoverdalePage takes on Robert Plant's Fate of Nations. We want to hear from you in the chat. Let's do this. Hey everybody, we are live. It's the Contrarians, and it's not Wednesday, it's Tuesday. Oh, I hear myself in the background.
Oh my goodness.
Tonight, we are going to do yet another episode in the Battle of the Rock, which is funny. It's been like a double whammy today because we just got done recording one. But I think this whole concept works out better live, so we're going to do another one live. Tonight, we're looking at two records from 1993. CoverdalePage, which was a collaboration between David Coverdale and Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin. Obvious. And then we're looking at Robert Plant's sixth solo album, Fate of Nations, from 1993. I can't remember how we decided this. It was somebody on here who decided.
I think I came up with that one.
Martin,
Martin
all
came
right.
up with it.
Well, cool. I'm going to let Martin talk about it then, since he came up with it. We do want to hear from everybody in the chat. So the way we're going to do this is kind of like a double whammy dark horse. So we will want everybody's rating out of 10 at the end when it's time. Martin, so do we want to do both albums at once? Is that how
I think so? Yeah, just a big comparison. Sure.
Okay. So I'll try to keep track of people in the comments. So if you do give me a score or something, I will jot it down. Okay. All right, Martin, take over and start us out.
Well, okay, so yeah, I came up with this one because I instinctually don't really like these album battle things, but I like them when they kind of make sense. And this one really makes sense because it's really interesting that both of these guys are coming out with albums in exactly the same year, right? So with CoverdalePage, I've been going through an update and expansion of my old Whitesnake book, and there's a fair bit of CoverdalePage. It's going to have different cover, different title, and all that. But I've just gone through the section where there's a little bit of talk about that because I remember talking to Ricky Phillips about it, and it turns out, and David Coverdale, and it turns out that this album comes together because Whitesnake is broken up. And John Kalodner is actually trying to get a Led Zeppelin reunion going, and that doesn't happen either. So he puts these two guys together because Whitesnake was kind of like that, assemble the parts, and they had great success with it. But the funny thing is, over time, John Kalodner really regretted doing this, and he even they were all down in Brazil at the same time, coincidentally, and he even wrote Robert Plant a letter apologizing to him for putting Coverdale and Page together, because Robert Plant was pretty ticked off at this album. So what do we get with this album? We get a belabored album that took a long time to put together, right? And it has a lot of different players, but not that many. I mean, a couple of different bass players, Ricky Phillips, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but Denny Carmassi is doing the drums on here. And what we end up with is an album where it's just always been a vaguely unsatisfying record to me. We've moved on past the hair metal years, but it still seems to have some of the vestiges of the hair metal idea of just overworking everything and being very overwrought with the whole thing. It took a long time to put together. By the end of it, apparently Jimmy was not that particularly keyed in and interested. And then even David Coverdale, I think, was a little bit not keyed in and interested. And so it did get mixed reviews. I mean, people did think of it as just a little bit of a crude pasting together of what Whitesnake was doing. Maybe a little combination of throughout all the different versions of Whitesnake and what you would expect to be Jimmy Page riffs, either electric ones or acoustic playing, like very obviously in an obvious sort of way, right? And then put together with just an overbearing, huge, boomy, wet, I guess you would call it a wet drum sound. I mean, I'm amazed with David Coverdale and Jimmy Page producing together that they both let the drums be so loud, because the drums are really loud on this album. So yeah, I mean, just vaguely speaking, I go through this record and I end up being unsatisfied with all these different little directions that they do. There is one super fast one on here, Feeling Hot, but we've got Shake My Tree, which was a little bit of a hit. Pride and Joy was a little bit of a hit. I think this went platinum, right? So that's pretty cool. And it's got some acoustic stuff and some blues. One thing I noticed, and I'm surprised, I even checked Reddit, I checked the wiki, I couldn't see anybody saying this anywhere. There's a song on here called Take a Look at Yourself, which sounds like like very much a ripoff, a remake of the Tracks of My Tears, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, with Take a Good Look at Yourself, Take a Good Look at Your Face. That whole chorus is the same. It's ridiculous. And I actually couldn't find anybody talking about that. That was very odd, right? So that's my feelings on this record. I kind of put it in the category of a 6 out of 10, I would say. Moving on to the Robert Plant. Robert Plant, of course, has been way more prolific. Where's my camera here? Robert Plant has been way more prolific than Jimmy Page, obviously, through this era, to the point where we did a whole panel book on Robert Plant. So we've, every single Robert Plant album I've gone through with a panel situation and gone through this. And I remember when Fate of Nations came out, I was on a little bit of a down with him because I feel like there was too much dancey 80s production thrown into Now and Zen and Manic Nirvana. And at this point, what we have, interestingly enough, very much like Coverdale and Page, we have a certain version of going back to the roots a little bit. He's toned back the production to the point where there's still a lot going on, and it's even more ridiculous in how complicated it was put together and how many players are on this album. But it doesn't sound like it. It doesn't sound as much as the Coverdale Page. It doesn't sound as corporate, put it that way. So it sounds like a really complicated, good 70s production or a 90s production, perhaps, but not an 80s production. And you've got some really nice spiritual sounding acoustic sort of things on here, I believe, and 29 Palms. And you've got the cover If I Were a Carpenter, but you've got the two very Zeppelin-esque ones on here, Memory Song and the big single from it, Calling to You. 11 tracks, pretty interesting. It sounds folksy and down home, even though, like I say, there's just like an army of players on this. I love that Francis Dunnery's on it. That's really cool. Michael Lee as well. I got to meet him once, sadly no longer with us. So I think Robert Plant kind of, he makes a conservative old style Robert Plant album, more conservative than even Pictures at 11 or Principle of Moments. I think it sounds like just really straightforward, interesting rock and roll generalist songwriting, but it's got the quality of Robert Plant and the good lyrics and some Zeppelin heaviness and some really nice acoustic and some experimental things where I think it just works. I have a lot more goodwill towards this album than I do to the Coverdale Page, and it's probably my favorite of a good chunk of this era, I suppose. It's, I joke around. I mean, it's true, but I can't believe, this happened. But I would say for 15 years, I was calling the Principle of Moments my favorite album of all time by anybody. I just think it's an absolute masterpiece. So yeah, I got a lot of time for Robert Plant. And then after this, of course, he goes into his I'm Mr. Archival, Historic, Folkways, kind of American songbook, old-timey reproduction values. He's got this really distinct sound that he eventually gets into in a big way coming up after this. I just want to mention one more record in here. Walking into Clarksdale, I think, is the Lost Led Zeppelin album. I love that record to death. So that is Robert and Jimmy getting it right. I think by far that's the greatest thing Jimmy did post Led Zeppelin is Walking into Clarksdale. I think it's a fantastic album. So Robert Plant, I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. I'm gonna give Coverdale Page a 6 out of 10.
All right, excellent. There you go. Well, let's throw it over to. I think I'm gonna throw it over to the Elder of Rock. The way I look at it on the screen, Elder, what's your thoughts on these two records?
All right. Well, Martin pretty much said most of what I was thinking, like as far as the Coverdale Page, it's
Martin tends to do that.
Yeah, it's like
Sorry about that.
it doesn't feel like there's a chemistry going on there. There's just like a little bit forced. The production, I agree, is very 80s hair metal. And I just feel like, I don't know, there was just something missing. The couple of songs I like are like kind of like the slower acoustic songs instead of the more rock ones. So, you know, yeah, it's interesting those things you said about, I didn't know that for sure, about the coming together of this album and how it took a long time and everything like that. So, but yeah, I agree with all that. I think that's pretty much my feelings on the album. As far as what I would give this album, I would probably give it a 5. You know, just because it just doesn't sound together. There's no chemistry really. So yeah, and as far as Robert Plant, Fate of Nations, yeah, it sounds to me like this is, you know, I really loved this album when it came out. I remember seeing the video for Calling to You, and it's got a great electric violin kind of solo in it. And I was just thinking, man, this is really Led Zeppelin type thing. And I just love everything on this album. It just does sound very, like you said, conservative, very Zeppelin-ish. You know, the production is very conservative. It isn't like you said, the Now and Zen and Manic Nirvana, which did sound like 80s albums and sound like he was, you know, so it sounds like Robert Plant is ready to move on from that decade and go and just do something different and more, I think, reaching even back into his roots more, embracing, because before when he got solo, he wasn't really embracing the Zeppelin thing. It took him a while. I think Now and Then he started to embrace it a little, and then this shows him kind of really, I think, embracing the whole his roots and what he came from and everything like that. So I would give this album though a 7.
All right.
Sweet.
Gary Joyce coming in. He's giving Plant an 8.5. Let me record that while he's up because I gotta keep track, ladies and gentlemen. And he's given Page Coverdale an 8.5.
8.25 and 8.5.
8.25. 8.25. Yeah, right. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, numbers are hard. All right, cool. Anybody else had any? Well, keep them. You're not wrong. I'm not wrong. I'm never wrong. All right, I'm going to throw it over to the Parish of Rock. If you got more scores, keep them coming. I will record them as we go. And I do want to extend a thanks to the panel tonight for kicking it out of the park. And I want to also extend a thanks to everybody in the chat. We do this because we like to talk music, and we couldn't do it without you, so we appreciate it. Let's turn it over to the Parish of Rock. Parish, what you got?
Okay. Well, firstly, I just want to say here in the UK, CoverdalePage got to number 4 in the album charts, and Robert Plant got to number 6. So from a sales point of view, charting point of view, there wasn't a lot of difference. Back then, though, I'd fallen out of love with both Page and Plant. I didn't like what either of those did, particularly during the 80s. I wasn't listening to either of them. I did get CoverdalePage at the time, but I only got it because of David Coverdale. Big Whitesnake fan, big David Coverdale fan. And I probably didn't really hear or get, as in buy Fate of Nations until 10 years later, early 2000s. So what do I think of the albums? Well, I've always liked the CoverdalePage album. I think it's a good hard rock album. Shape My Tree, I think it's a great opener, some great riffs. Continues with Waiting on You, another great rocker. Take Me for a Little While, I think is quite Whitesnakey. Pride and Joy is quite amusing because when he does the talking bit, to me, David Coverdale sounds like he's trying to be David Lee Roth. Go back and listen to it. He sounds like he's trying to mimic what David Lee Roth used to do on albums like Women and Children First. So that always amuses me. Feeling Hot is my favourite track on the album. I think that's a great rocker. Maybe because right in the middle of it, they dig in and get their inner Slade with the Warehaus, which sounds like it's been lifted straight off We'll Bring the House Down. So anybody who sounds a bit like Slade, as you know, gets a thumbs up from me. I'm not so keen on Easy Does It, Take a Look at Yourself, and Don't Leave Me This Way. Not so keen on those two tracks. But Absolution Blues, I think, is good. And I think Whisper a Prayer for the Dying, I think, is really good. And it's funny, really, because back in the day, I remember the reviews kind of slated the album, really, because they said it sounded like Coverdale was trying to sound like Robert Plant with his screaming and whatever. He never sounded like Robert Plant to me. He sounds more like Brian Johnson on this album. And on some of the tracks, Whisper a Prayer for the Dying, for instance, almost sounds like it's a duet between Brian Johnson and David Coverdale to me, the way he switches between the two vocals. So I find that quite amusing. I've done a lot of driving today. I got up early and did a 5-hour drive for work, and then coming home tonight, I did a 5-hour drive back. I had 4 albums on constant rotation. 2 were the 2 we covered. Grant and I did prior to this. 2 of them were these 2, CoverdalePage and Robert Plant. I found CoverdalePage, every time it came on, my speed went up. And I think, actually, you crank this up, it's a driving album. It makes you drive faster. I think the drums are a bit tinny, but when you crank it up loud, the drums actually, I think, sound really good. So, yeah, a driving album. I'm a bit worried I might find I've got a speeding ticket in the post on its way. The speed I was going on some of the motorways on the way home. But I think it's really good. Good album. I'll come back to scores, etc. in a moment. The Robert Plant album, it's funny again, playing them on rotation. I had the CoverdalePage first and then into the Robert Plant album. And there's not a lot of difference in style, I don't think, between CoverdalePage and Calling to You. They actually Calling to You sounds like it could, to me, it could be on the CoverdalePage album. It's very similar. So that it's quite a nice actual transition from one album to the other. And whilst I think CoverdalePage is a really good hard rock album, I think the Robert Plant is a really good rock album. There's certainly more texture to it. There's more balance. It's more interesting. I think across the 2, the best songs are on Robert Plant's album. I think Calling to You is great. I think 29 Palms, I liked it at the time. I still like it. I think that's a fantastic song. But also there's some songs I don't particularly like. I don't really like Memory Song. I certainly don't like If I Were a Carpenter. Promised Land, I think, is a bit wimpy. Don't like that particularly. So there are some songs I don't like very much at the moment, very much on it. As another aside, it does bring me to my decision on which album I like best. So as another aside, as you do when you get to my age, everybody's interested in my blood pressure. So I went to the doctors recently and my blood pressure was slightly on the high side. So at the moment, I'm having to take blood pressure readings twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And what I've found over the last 5 days, if I play CoverdalePage, my blood pressure is moving into hypertension. If I play Robert Plant, my blood pressure is really nice and calm. So I've been playing Robert Plant quite a lot. So when I give my readings back to the doctor, it looks like I'm really chilled and cool and laid back because it has that effect. So on the basis that I want to live quite a long time, I would prefer to listen to Robert Plant that brings down my blood pressure than listen to CoverdalePage that raises my blood pressure and forces me to drive like a maniac on the motorway. So for that reason alone, I'm going to give this to Robert Plant. And I'm going to give very close scores. So I would give it a 7 to CoverdalePage and a 7.5 to Robert Plant.
Nice.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, if anybody in the chat has not given me their score, I've gotten everybody recorded. But if you come in and you still haven't given me your score, give me your score and I will record it. All right, thank you, Parish. What? I don't think we've ever had anybody rate an album like that, but it doesn't mean
Yeah, that's
whatever works for you. So, all right,
based on my
awesome.
blood pressure.
For the sake of
What,
his
what
health,
would your favorite album be
going
for
with
cholesterol
Plant.
level, though?
I don't know.
Yeah, do we have anything
Favorite album for your
cholesterol?
cholesterol level. I listen to this to lower my cholesterol. You know.
Something not too sugary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ken White says the Parish needs to find different music then.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, you're listening to the wrong stuff.
I am, yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you, Parish. Let's throw it over to David. David,
Hey,
what do you think of these records and your rating out of 10?
yeah, it was interesting. I probably, in earnest, haven't listened to either of these maybe in a decade, like where I really sat down and tried to dive in. I mean, the collection gets so vast at times, things get lost. And I think it was interesting to go back and revisit them. And I think the my results probably are different now than they would have been maybe when these albums came out or shortly thereafter. Certainly, as I've kind of alluded to on previous panels, timeline sort of matters. So, with me coming into music in earnest, kind of right in the middle of 80s, hard rock, kind of that 87, 88 period, that sensibility isn't a negative for me, the sound, but I think, you know, kind of, I'll try not to reiterate too much of what the previous panel said, because I think they made some really good points, but I think I'll start with CoverdalePage, and I think revisiting this one, I certainly, some of the notes I had sort of was, I think, obvious and contrived, and I think that kind of leads into some of the things that Martin was saying and the others. I mean, it just felt disjointed. It felt put together. While it wasn't terrible, it just felt like it was either Page doing Whitesnake songs or Coverdale doing Zeppelin-esque songs. It didn't really feel necessarily at times for me like a true collaboration. It felt very put together. And I kind of walked away feeling like it was either their heart wasn't in it, which is certainly possible given what, Martin has said, or they were really playing it safe and just sitting in their comfort areas. And you wonder if they were truly into a collaboration, what maybe a second album would have sounded like if they just let go of some of the cliches in the areas where they're comfortable. I think, while I like a lot of these songs, I think some of them really, Coverdale really leans into what he does in Whitesnake, and then there's this sort of the recurring, as I'll allude to what Martin said as well. It's very obvious some of the Page, sensibilities that are here. I mean, you hear 5 seconds ago, that's a Jimmy Page lick, right? It may not be a complete rip of Zeppelin, but it's really, you can almost, pick it out. So I think, I liked a lot of it. It probably didn't sit with me as strong as it would have, when it came out or 20 years ago. I think as my musical taste evolves and I like things other than hard rock, right? So, I think there's the material that I like. I think Elder said, I think I liked a lot of the acoustic stuff, maybe better than the harder stuff. I did make a note that I liked Feeling Hot, but that just feels like a Whitesnake song to me, and I like Whitesnake, so I said, that's probably why I like it. But I thought, Take a Look at Yourself and Whisper, Prepare for the Dying, a lot of the acoustic stuff I thought I liked quite a bit. So while I liked it, I feel like it maybe didn't age super well and feels a little contrived and put together. So for those reasons, I
think we all better hit mute while David's talking, see where that sound's coming from.
So I think for this one, I'm going to give this one a 7. So similar to the Parish, I'm going to give CoverdalePage a 7.
All right.
Kind of switching gears to Plant. I think, this one, I really enjoyed revisiting this. So the Plant era, when I got into, obviously growing up, you get, Zeppelin, right? And you kind of get into that. But then I think sort of the Now and Zen, Manic Nirvana, and this record is sort of the trilogy of my entry point to Plant, right? So they're always going to be meaningful to some degree. Obviously went back and got those really great early records as well. But, this kind of trilogy really sits, in an important place for me. But this album really revisiting it, I heard a lot of, it was interesting. I looked up the guitar player because I immediately felt like the guitar had sort of an 80s, very jangly, kind of 80s sound. So I guess it's the guy from the Cutting Crew. So it does sort of delve into the 80s, and so some of that guitar work, although while the tonality of the guitar, to me sounds 80s at times, it really sounded, very, I think Martin said spiritual, but to me, I was thinking sort of Eastern at times. Some of the selection of it wasn't very typical Western pentatonic kind of scales, that you would hear. Some of the note selection, it felt very kind of, like I said, Eastern, a little bit maybe of a tip of the hat to some of the stuff they were doing with Zeppelin. So I liked that. I thought the songs were strong. They were clean. And this one really, sat really well. I thought that, it was really strong. I think 29 Palms for me, I thought was a really great song. I remember hearing it, years ago, and it really sat well. I thought The Greatest Gift sat good with me. And I even liked If I Were a Carpenter. So a little bit different than Parish on those. I think we sit a little bit different, but I think those were the highlights for me. But overall, I really thought it had this, the sort of an Eastern ethereal vibe at times, and I really liked it. It was really great listening. It's probably something that, while I'll probably put the Coverdale page back in the rack and leave it there for a while, I think the Robert Plant is probably something I'm going to keep out and then revisit for a bit. I think so. That probably tells the tale as much as anything. So 7 for Coverdale Page, and I'm going to give an 8 for Robert Plant.
All right.
Sweet. Nice.
No idea where this is going to end up. So has everybody voted that's going to vote? Joe, do you have a opinion on this? Since I know you're a little late, but have you heard these records? We will take your rating real quick.
I just want to add one quick thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can go on YouTube and you can actually see Coverdale Page playing In My Time of Dying and Still of the Night, which is really cool.
Oh, wow.
Like in a rehearsal or what?
No, live. Live.
I
think they only played. I think the way this works is they only went to Japan and played a few shows, and that was it. But yeah, you can see those 2 songs. I don't know what other songs, but I read that somewhere. I thought, I got to go hear this, man. So it's because David was saying, that's right. He was telling me in an interview that, he kind of had to push Jimmy to play Still of the Night because Jimmy was saying, this is really hard, but he sorted it out. And so, yeah, you can go right to YouTube right now and just see them playing live on stage in a big stage, either in My Time of Dying or Still of the Night.
How cool is that?
Yeah, they need to do something to pad out that set because
not much in there.
It's the one album,
Yeah. All right, I guess everybody's cool. All right, well, I don't really have any opinion on these records. I'm just hosting tonight. But I did have an opinion on Foreigner 4, and I had a damn opinion on, but we ran out of time.
Yeah, nice. Well, wrap her up then. Go for it.
Classic Rock and Roll Junkie, Coverdale Page. All right, we got an 8. All right. Jimmy Page is the GOAT, 100%. Classic Rock, you got a rating on, okay. And you've got Plants an 8.2. Okay, thank you.
I do wonder sometimes if this album, because this without being put together, I guess then towards the beginning of the 90s, grunge hadn't really quite set in yet. And I wonder if this came out a couple years later, if the production would have been a little different, and maybe that would have helped the album.
Yeah, even the Hugh Syme cover art, right? With the totally Hugh Syme, that kind of thing, and then the text that we saw in the 90s all the time on Megadeth albums and whatnot. Oh my God, it's just such a 90s look to it, the whole thing too, right?
It is 90s. That font, 100%. All right, let's see what we've got. This is what we've got for Coverdale Page. We've got a 7.36.
Okay.
I thought it'd be higher. Well, what do I know? We got a lot of numbers to deal with. Oh my God. Okay, Coverdale Page is 7.36. So we could, and Robert Plant is a 7.34.
Wow.
Can you what the hell? We keep balancing out pretty much.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Joe's coming in.
That's why it's a good battle. right?
All right, we got a 9. Let me put Joe's in.
Here we go. So
Wait a
now,
minute, Joe. You might really change us.
gap's a little more now. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we are at a 7.46 to a 7.32.
all right.
So CoverdalePage just has the slight lead, but
Deal.
we pretty much a draw. Pretty much a draw.
Yeah.
So all right,
Right,
cool.
still a draw.
We wrap this dog up. I want to thank the panel tonight. Of course, we've got the elder, the parish. We've got David, Martin, myself. I didn't know if Butch was going to make it. Butch had another engagement, but Butch was supposed to be on here. I would have loved to have heard what Butch said, but either way, this panel kicked it out of the park. I want to thank everybody in the chat tonight to keep it interactive. We're just trying to turn you on to music. If you'd like to be part of the Contrarians, we have a Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel like that, we'd love to have you. You have you get to see the content early. You can see all the content that Martin is cranking out. So much content. You could be all a part of it and you could see it early. We also have a Ko-fi. Buy us a pint or a cup of coffee. We'd appreciate that. We take donations. We're just here really to talk music. So hopefully we've turned you on to something. Hopefully you want to go out and listen to these records if you haven't. All right, panel, we will see you on the next one. What's next? I don't know, but I'm going to do a damn shameless plug. Saturday morning, 10 a.m., tune into the Warehaus. I will have Brendan Snyder and Pete Pardo on, and we will be talking our favorite rock candy CDs.
Ooh,
so get there early.
topic.
Get in line early. Tickets go on sale early. It's going to be a good show. I've never done a live stream at 10 a.m., but
Be a great
Gonna
topic.
camp out.
camp out in front. We'll get you a good seat up front, and we'll see up there. Is there anything else? Anybody else has anything to add before we wrap it up?
No,
No.
good to see
Very
you.
good.
Good to see you
Oh.
guys. Take
All
care.
right. Yeah,
everybody.
that was fun.
Keep
Thanks.
clean, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Okay. See ya. Bye now.
See you guys. See you later.